Okay, we continue. In Avodah Zarah, Perek Daled, Mishnah Tes. We continue on with the Inyanim, as we mentioned the last Mishnah, the Inyanim of Yain Nesach. So the previous Mishnah taught us Yesoid that juice in a wine press cannot become Yain Nesach until it flows into the cistern at the end of the wine press. That is the opinion of the Mishnah Rishoina, which continues on here. So based on this, that it doesn't become Yain Nesach until it flows into the actual cistern, not as it flows through. As it flows through, it's not yet Yain. It's Yain when it's in the cistern, according to the day of the Mishnah Rishoina. So based on this, our Mishnah will discuss the halacha as to whether a Jew is allowed to work for an idolater, for an Avodah Zarah, when he's making the wine. Question number one. The Mishnah will also discuss another issue, another problem related to producing wine for an idolater, and that is the question of the issue of causing it to become tameh. Let's explain it a little bit better. As far as Nekuda number one, as far as the first issue, we will learn in the next Perek, in Mishnah, Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph. There we will learn the halacha that it is forbidden to earn money by working with an item which is also ba'ano. It's forbidden to work with an item and earn money with an item which is also ba'ano, such as Yain Nesach. And therefore, once the juice the idolater squeezes from his grapes is considered Yain, then it is forbidden for a Jew to work with it. That's number one. Number two, benogea to the second issue that the Mishnah will discuss. That is, producing wine for an idolater and therefore causing these grapes to become tameh. That we have to understand another klal. And that is that the Tana of our Mishnah holds that there is an isur derabanan to cause chulin produce, ordinary produce in Eretz Yisrael to become tameh. That is the klal of asur ligroim tuma lechulin be'Eretz Yisrael. It's also to cause any kind of produce, any kind of fruits, any kind of vegetables to become tameh in Eretz Yisrael. Midoraisa, it is also to cause tuma only to foods that are related to kodshim, such as tuma or kodshe mizbeach v'chadoime. Now this isur derabanan applies even to produce that belongs to an idolater. And therefore, if working with an idolater's grapes or juice during the wine production will cause it to become tameh, then it's forbidden for a Jew to perform such work. That's the second issue discussed in the Mishnah. So now let's see the Mishnah inside. The Mishnah says, Dorchin ima oivit kechovim bagas. We may tread grapes. In other words, we may crush the grapes by stepping on them. Who is the Dorchin? We, the Jews, are allowed to tread the grapes together with an idolater. Dorchin ima oivit kechovim bagas. Bagas meaning in the wine press. And we're allowed to do this says the Tan of the Mishnah, for pay. How can we do such a thing? Because since the juice is not yet considered yain and does not attain the halacha of yain nesech until it flows into the cistern, then a Jew who helps to crush the grapes is not working with a davar osu. Is not working with something which is as yet prohibited al pi halacha. Nor is he causing produce of Eretz Yisrael to become tameh, because another reason, because the grapes became tameh as soon as the idolater began stepping on them. And when the Jew later joins in the work process, he's not causing any extra tumah to them. In other words, the grapes became tameh. When did they become tameh? When the goy began working with them. Now that the Jew comes along and he continues on with the process, there's no such thing as something becoming more tameh. If it's tameh, it's tameh. Period. Let's explain this a little bit better. But when the Mishnah permits a Jew to tread grapes with an idolater, to be dorchin im ha'ovid kachovim, it means that he's allowed to join an idolater who's already begun to step on them. It is, however, also to start treading the grapes together with the goy, because then if he does it together with him from the very start, he is in the process of causing the tumah simultaneous with the goy. Because the Jew would then be causing tumah to some of the grapes, right? The goy can't step on all of the grapes simultaneously. So he steps on some, the Jew steps on some, and they're both simultaneously causing tumah, and therefore, from the very start, he cannot join. If he joins later, no Yisrael, because the grapes have already become tameh. Now, the additional nakuda to understand here is that food cannot become tameh until it has become prepared for tumah. Prepared for tumah, the halachic expression is, it became huchsha lekabel tumah. It became huchsha lekabel tumah. In this case, by becoming wet. And therefore, if the Jew joins the idolater at the very beginning of the process, before all the grapes have become wet, the juice coming out of the grapes that he steps on will make the other grapes wet, and thereby cause them to become tameh when the idolater touches them. I think we understand that now. So, we may tread grapes together with idolater in the winepress for pay, because the juice is not yet considered yain and cannot become nesech until it flows into the cistern. Therefore, the Jew who helps to crush the grapes is not working with a davar osu, nor is he causing the produce of Eretz Yisrael to become tameh, because the grapes have already become tameh as soon as the idolater began stepping on them. And when the Jew joins later, he's not causing any further tumah. Something cannot become more tameh. It is tameh, period. Aval, continues the Mishnah, avaloi boitzrim imoy. However, we may not harvest grapes together with an idolater in Eretz Yisrael, because the task of harvesting includes putting the grapes into the wine press, where they will later become tameh when the idolater begins stepping on them. And therefore, a Jew who puts the grapes in the wine press for pressing is regarded as causing them to become tameh, which is also. Now the Gemara is going to tell us later that the Chachomim later reversed these rulings, and we'll see that at the end. Now the Mishnah teaches additional halachas that involve the isur of causing tumah to produce of Eretz Yisrael. Says the Mishnah, Yisrael shu oise betuma. If a Jew violates the halacha and produces wine in Eretz Yisrael in a state of tuma, for example, he presses the wine in a wine press that is tamei. So here we're talking about if a Jew does this, a Jew is violating the halacha and he produces yain in Eretz Yisrael in a state of tuma. For example, he presses the wine in a wine press that is tamei. Says the Mishnah, in such a situation, again, we're talking here about a Jew. So another Jew is not allowed to tread the grapes of harvest. Another Jew is not allowed to tread the grapes or harvest them together with him, together with this other Jew, because it's also to assist a sinner in his sinful way. He is Messiah Yedei Oivre Avera. He's Messiah Yedei Oivre Avera. Let's understand it better. A Jew who makes his wine in a state of Tuma is, says the Mishnah, treated more strictly than an idolater. Because in the case of an idolater, we may at least tread grapes with him once he began the process on his own, because we learned the grapes have already become tamei and he's not making them more tamei. Once they're tamei, period. But we may not do this in the case of a Jew. Why can't we not do this in the case of a Jew? Because a Jew who makes his wine in Tuma is over an Avera, is over an Isur. And we may not help any Jew in his process of sinning. We may not be Messiah the over Avera, even after the damage has been done. So as to discourage him from doing this again in the future. The non-Jew idolater, however, is not sinning by making his wine tamei, because he is under no obligation to avoid making it tamei. This issur is only for Jews. So Yisrael shu oise betuma lo yidorchi v'lo boitzrim imoy. We cannot assist the sinner in his avera. But says the Mishnah, aval molichin imoy chaviris legas. However, after the wine has been produced, we may carry empty barrels with him to the wine press to be filled with wine, and also umevin imoy minagas, and we may also carry away with him barrels that have been filled with wine from this wine press. Why is this so? Because once the wine was made in Tuma, the Maisa Iso, the Maisa Avera, is done with. It's finished. You made wine betuma, period. It was over an Iso. Now, pouring the Tame wine into barrels and carrying these barrels back and forth are not part of the process of making wine. These are separate activities. This has nothing to do with making wine. And therefore, it's mutter to help the owner perform these activities and also be paid for them. Be paid for them. Let's understand this a little bit better. The issue against helping a sinner, the issue of being Messiah, the Oivre Avera, applies only to participating in the Maisa Avera itself, in the sinful act itself, which in this case is the pressing of the grapes. Once the Maisa Avera has been completed, al pi halacha, it's mutar to assist the owner in dealing with the wine. In dealing with the wine further after it has been produced as wine. Once it's been produced as wine, we're now into a new phase, having nothing to do with the Maisa Avera itself. And in this respect, In this respect, Tuma is different from Yain Nesech, because it's permitted to help the owner carry Tome wine, because Tome wine is mutar for drinking and other benefits. Yain Nesech, on the other hand, is also Behano completely, is also for all benefits. And for this reason, it's also to help the owner carry his Nesech wine. Because the Nesech wine remains also Behano. Yain Tome, not so. Now the Mishnah continues a similar case. Nachtoim shuoisa betuma. If a Jewish baker violates the halacha and makes dough in a state of tuma, for example, he prepares the dough in utensils that are tomei. So then what? Similar to the case we just learned about the yain, about the grapes. So nachtom shuoisa betuma, if a Jewish baker violates the halacha and makes dough in a state of tuma, loy loshin v'lo orchin imoy. You may not need KNEAD, you may not need or shape the dough with him, because kneading the dough, shaping the dough is part of the process of making of the bread, making of the ultimate product for which he's kneading the dough, etc. So you can't knead or shape the dough with him, because you're actually assisting him in the Ma'aseh Avera. But once the breads have been made, once the breads have been baked, however, once they're baked, you may carry the baked bread with him to the palter, to the shopkeeper who's going to sell them. A palter is, we say pas palter. A palter is someone who buys bread from a baker and sells it in the marketplace. So lo loshin v'lo ochim, because that's part of the process of the making of the bread. But once the bread is made, we may carry the baked bread with him to the shopkeeper. Why? Because after the bread has already been baked in a state of tuma, the Ma'aseh Avera is done, the Ma'aseh Avera is complete, and transporting it to the bake shop is a new activity. It has nothing to do with the Ma'aseh Afiyah of the bread that was made betuma. So helping him transport it is not part of the Ma'aseh Avera, which does not involve any sin. Now we have to add a very big, important footnote to this Mishnah, as we did to the first Mishnah. We explained above, that the Mishnah's rulings are based on the Tana's opinion on the Mishnah Rishono. That what? A, the juice of grapes is not subject to the law of Yain Nesech until it enters the cistern at the bottom of the wine press. That's one thing the Mishnah Rishono taught us. And secondly, that it is forbidden to cause tuma even to chulin produce of Eretz Yisrael. However, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah will tell us that both of these views were later reversed. Ein halacha kemishnah rishoyna. And therefore, the accepted halacha is actually the opposite of what's stated in this Mishnah. Namely, that A, it is also for a Jew to tread grapes with an idolater, absolutely also for the Jew to tread grapes with an idolater, because the juice becomes nesech as soon as it begins flowing. Not as soon as it ends up in the cistern. That's the Mishnah Rishono. We don't paskin like that. We explained that at the end of the first Mishnah as well. It's also for a Jew to tread grapes with an idolater because the juice becomes yain nesech as soon as the juice begins flowing. And the Jew is therefore making money from something which is also be'ano, period. And secondly, it's permitted to harvest grapes for an idolater, even though he causes them to become tameh, because it is permitted to cause tuma to produce in Eretz Yisrael. Now this applies, versteht sich, only to chulin, from which truma and meiser have been separated, or to produce from a non-Jew's vineyard or field, which is not subject to the requirements of truma and meiser. However, it's also to make the tevel, the untithed produce of Eretz Yisrael, tameh, since this will cause the truma and the meiser that are later separated from it to become tameh. And therefore it's forbidden to assist a Jew who produces his wine and tuma before trumas and maisros have been separated. It is also similarly also to assist a Jewish baker who makes his dough tameh, since this will make the challah that must later be separated from it, hafroshas challah, it'll make it tameh. And challah has the same halachas as truma. Okay, has to be reviewed carefully. These are not simple mishnayos. Nu inyonim. I hope I made it clear.